The UFC just announced a new title fight between Alexandre Pantoja and Steven Erceg to headline UFC 301. And I'm just really happy about this one because, you know, as a hardcore fan, I've always been saying, show the flyweights some love. You know, these guys, they put on the best fights. It's like the most good division. It's really underrated, and I'm really happy that these flyweights are getting a nice main event. Jeepers Creepers, I'm really happy for Alexandre Pantoja, who happens to be the most boring flyweight on the roster. He has the stinkiest grappling style in the game, and people still call guys like Umar Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev nuthuggers when it's actually Alexandre Pantoja, and Steven Erceg is ranked number 10. Fuck! Alexandre Pantoja and Steven Erceg? Are you kidding me? Is this a joke? Alexandre Pantoja and Steve Erceg, that's what you got, UFC? Wow, man, so hardcore. Steve Erceg. Listen, I was just starting to become a fan of Steve Erceg, and I will say this. I much prefer Steve Erceg fight for a belt, and undeservedly so, than Muhammad Mokaev, the most boring fighter to ever exist on planet Earth. But the flyweight division is a fucking disgrace. And I'm tired of acting like, man, the flyweight's so fun, man. No, the flyweight division sucks, okay? You do not have to pretend to be a hardcore. The flyweight division sucks. Let's just get that out of the way, all right? The freaking Alexandre Pantoja, dude, bad man. He's freaking dominant champ. Yeah, because he's fighting the same pipsqueaks over and over again. And I'm happy that this is not a rematch. Oh my goodness, I'm happy it's not a rematch. But the best you got is Steve Erceg? Not Manel Cap, Steve Erceg. Wow. They better put on some fucking heavyweight fights on this card. Some fat guys that don't have to cut weight, because I know UFC 302 or 301, whatever this is, it's not so far away. Let's get Derek Lewis. Let's get Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Put him on this card, okay? Get some fat boys in the cage. Because there's not going to be a whole lot of good fights. I don't think Edson Barboza is going to fight Josh Emmett. This is what we got. Steve Erceg versus Alexandre Pantoja. Dude, let me just be fucking honest with you guys. Alexandre Pantoja is the most boring champion in the UFC. I don't care if he's had some wars with Brandon Moreno. That was credit to Brandon Moreno. All right, that was all Brandon. Usually, these pipsqueak flyweights are unable to have any good moments against Pantoja because he's too big, he's too strong, he's too powerful, and he kind of mows them down up until he gets his hands on them and stinks it up on the ground. And what we're about to see for a main event on UFC 302 is Alexandre Pantoja take down Steve Erceg, who does have some decent wrestling, but come on, dude, it's Steve Erceg, like number 10 ranked in the world. Sure, he knocked out Matt Schnell, like that's what they're going to be playing as a highlight for him going into this fight, but Matt Schnell has the worst chin in the flyweight division, and if you have a bad chin in the flyweight division, you may have the worst chin in the entirety of the UFC, okay? He just knocked out Matt Schnell. Other than that, dude, he's not been dominant. He went to a stinky decision in his fight before that, and I'm starting to like Steve Erceg more, and I do prefer Steve Erceg over the most boring human to ever exist on the planet in the UFC, Muhammad Mokaev, but, man, this fight's gonna suck. This fight is gonna suck. And you know what? What a hardcore fan would say is, man, these flyweights are fun. They're getting their crack at it. You know, Demetrius Johnson, I know he's going to catch a straight right now. People say that Demetrius Johnson is like the GOAT of the sport. And you just have to look at the people he was fighting. The flyweight division has always been weak. It's always been lacking talent. Back in the day, Demetrius Johnson was fighting guys that just went on UFC losing streaks, got cut from the UFC, got a chance at Tough, won on Tough. Tim Elliott, dude. He fought Tim Elliott, who had literally been cut from the UFC, and because he won a couple of fights on Tough, he got a title shot. The flyweight division has always been trash. It's a shit division, and I'm happy it exists. Like, sure, I'm happy it exists, but we get title fights like this, and I guarantee you this is not going to be a close fight. It's most likely just going to be Steve Erceg being held on bottom, and granite-chinned Pantoja, the entertaining savage that he is on the feet, is going to be entertaining for a 10-second burst. He's going to flail his arms around, land big meaty hooks, and then he's going to get a hold of Steve Erceg and smudge him into the canvas with the most boring crotch sniffer style you could ever imagine. And I mentioned, people call the Russian Dagestani fighters crotch sniffers. How about, let's actually get realistic now. Because people say, of course, the difference is the Brazilian guys, they're savages on the feet. But you really want to look at the most boring grapplers in the sport, it's more often than not, they're not Dagestani. They're actually guys like Pantoja. Pantoja. Guys like Jilton Almeida. All right? Who else? Who else are we going to bring up? RDA? Let's think of some other guys. Jilton Almeida, #1 crotch sniffer on the fucking planet. Crotchsniffer.org. He created the website himself. We got Pantoja. King of them. All right? Like, there's got to be others. There's got to be others, man. But good. What the heck is the UFC doing, dude? UFC 301. Pantoja versus Steve Erceg, man. This is a joke. This is actually a joke. You could have had Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad on this card. They should have had Leon and Bilal. I don't know if Bilal is turning down title shots because of Ramadan, but because they made something like this the main event for UFC 301, it kind of leads me to believe that they would have had Bilal. I mean, come on. You would have had to think the UFC would prefer Bilal and Leon. I guess Bilal is going to be doing Ramadan. He doesn't want to fight for a belt during Ramadan. It's just a really bad situation. They've got to get some really good heavyweight fights on this card. Call up Sergey Pavlovich and call up Cyril Gane. What the heck is Cyril Gane doing? Get him in the cage and get him to Brazil to fight Sergey Pavlovich. We don't need to hold out till France. No, we need Gane as a main event in France. Fuck that, dude. Put Benoit Saint-Denis as a main event. Get William Gomez as a main event for all I care. We need a good pay-per-view. Pay-per-views cost $80. No one's paying for Steve Erceg and Alexandre Pantoja. Oh, my goodness, man. I have yet to really look at the comments on Instagram, but I guarantee you, of course, people are going to be saying, damn, goes to show how weak flyweight is. I'm sure people are going to be saying things like that, but still, like, I guarantee you there are going to be some wannabe hardcore fans that are saying, dude, quit complaining. Pantoja's a savage. Pantoja's a savage. Sure. Pantoja's a savage. That's why his last couple of fights, every single grappling sequence was absolutely disgraceful. Abominable. All right, I'm going to start calling him the abominable snowman, dude. Fucking Alexandre Pantoja gets the main event. This is so crazy. And you know what? It's fine if he was fighting Manel Kape or someone that would actually be a tough out, but you just look at Steve Erceg. The guy looks like he's pushoverable. You can push him over to the ground. Steve Erceg, man. He's got the Sean Woodson build. Not really, but Sean Woodson looks like he's easy to take down. This is ridiculous. The flyweight division needs a tournament. That's the way to wake this division up. That's the way to save it. All right? Alexandre Pantoja, just give him the toughest kickboxers in the world, and let's do special rule set fights for him. Seriously. That's how you save the flyweight division. Special rule set fights for Pantoja, while the rest of the flyweights figure it out amongst themselves for a good old year. Ban grappling from flyweight. Okay? Because we usually have wars when there's no... I'm kidding. Like, I'm not going to get that silly and casual with you guys, but my goodness, man, they got to do something about this division. They were thinking about shutting it down completely, and they sent TJ Dillashaw to officially close it out with a win over Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo revived it. We actually had some really good flyweight fights after that. Like the Figueiredo and Moreno trilogy or quadrilogy was okay, even though it kind of set a precedent for all these rematches, and freaking Brandon Royval worked his way into the mix, and we've had a bunch of fights with him and the same two guys over and over and over again. In a way, I like that it's Erceg and not Makayev. I like that it's Erceg and not Moreno or Royval, because Royval was calling out the champ again. Let's do a trilogy. Everyone's wanting it. The fans are asking for it. We're not. We need a solid tournament in this division. Let's do Muhammad Makayev versus Tatsudo Taira. Let's throw Muhammad Makayev to the fucking wolves, because I'm tired of him smudging his way to the championship belt. And I think that Tatsudo Taira would be a tough matchup for him. I think he would force Muhammad Makayev to really struggle on the ground, because I think Tatsudo is the more dominant grappler. And then it's a guy that's not great on the feet versus Muhammad Makayev that looks like he's filling around his arms, never struck before a day in his life. So let's do that. But the matchups that I'd like to be put on UFC 300, I mentioned heavyweights. Why? Because I'm sorry, I keep saying UFC 300, right? 301. The matchups that make sense are heavyweight fights where guys don't have to cut a lot of weight. Jairzinho Rozenstruik just fought the Blob, And let's be honest, he didn't really take a lot of damage. It's not like he was kicking a whole lot. The man was just throwing jabs in Shamil the Blob Ghaziev's grinning, menacing face. I doubt that he's injured, and I doubt he really has to cut weight. Let's put him on UFC 301 with Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, maybe he can get one back in Brazil. Jilton Almeida, all right, maybe he just got concussed a little bit by Plotting Men Blades. As I said, Pavlovich and Gon, all right? Like, I understand that it's in Brazil, and normally you wouldn't have all of these crazy heavyweight fights on it, but who gives a fuck? It's a pay-per-view. It costs $80. Make it worth our time. Nobody wants to watch a pay-per-view that has freaking Pantoja and Erceg as the only good fight. I know that they also just booked Michel Pereira versus Mac McMurdoch, and I like it. Michel Pereira said he did want it to turn around, and it was good that the UFC turned him around, and he is an entertaining fighter. My first reaction to seeing that get announced was, oh, fuck, like, I wanted to see a step up, but then I realized, okay, it's only a month away. I'd rather him stay active on this and turn around for a weak card that actually will need some help. Let me see if any other fights have been announced on Big Marcel. By the way, I was cooking up a really solid video for you guys, and then I went to see a movie. I just watched Dune 2, and I was going to edit it and post it later tonight, but then I saw this news. I had to make a video about this. Let's check Big Marcel right now. Did Dana White post anything about this? Hold on, let's check if Dana White posted anything about this. Oh, Dana White, no post on his official Instagram about it, which means he's too ashamed to announce it to the world. Doesn't want to show his face, of course. Totally unprepared. Should have had Bilal and Leon booked on this card, man. This was a card for a BMF fight. You should have done Gaethje versus Makhachev in June, Max versus Topuria sometime this summer, and never made the BMF belt, and then put the BMF belt on the line in Brazil. That's what they should have done. All right? If they had added some really solid fights to UFC 300 like they should have, if they had added the Usman-Whitaker matchup or whatever, if they had done something with Hamzat, if they have done something with, let's say, who are the guys that I wanted? Sergey Pavlovich and Cyril Gane. Then we may have actually been able to see Charles on the Brazil card. Charles and Armand could have been on this card. Let's not forget that UFC 300 was a total mess, and they scrambled to put that together at the last second. They put a bunch of useless matchups on it. They made a bunch of silly fights for like UFC Mexico that could have been on UFC 300 too. I've been saying they should have done Cater versus Yair, and then they should have done Aljo versus Ortega. Anyway, let's check Big Marcel. Let's see what's going on right here. See if there are any new fights being announced. Brendan Allen just gets a new opponent in Chris Curtis. All right, I like that. William Gomez, Gene Silva. I like that. Gene Silva's a beast. I said he's going to win that fight by imposing his will. Jared Gordon, Nasrat Haqparast. Oh, that's going to be in Saudi Arabia. Okay, when is that card? June? Okay, I'm liking that. I'm liking that. And then, oh, yeah, Anthony Smith and Vitor Petrino. You know what? I think I might be changing my mind. I'm kind of happy about this one. Anthony Smith, Vitor Petrino. Michel Pereira's on the card too. Gene Silva's on the card. And we got a sick flyweight main event. Dude, I might even pay double just because. I might pay double. Just because. I'm actually happy that Anthony Smith is on this card. It's not over yet. If they add 2 good fights to this card, I ain't going to be upset. I just have a problem with the fact that the flyweight division is so pathetic. And there's not an easy fix, but it's kind of a joke. It's kind of a joke. Steve Erceg, who has by no means made himself out to be some boogeyman in this division. He's just an okay guy that's decently skilled. The fact that Steve Erceg is who they're getting for a title fight just goes to show how screwed this division is unless they make a tournament, okay? It really does. Joshua Van, he got booked to fight. I hope that's not at the Apex. Let me make sure. Oh, it's at the Apex. Joshua Van's at the Apex. Oh my gosh, man. Goodness gracious. By the way, I am going to be picking Tai Tuivasa to smoke Marcin Tubby Mantabora. That's my official prediction. I thought I would leave this video on that note. Tai Tuivasa KO in the first round over Big Tubby Marcin Tybura. Unfortunately, Marcin is not going to earn his freedom yet. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. And you know what? You know what? Really good idea. Let's put Tai Tuivasa on that card too. UFC 301, Tai Tuivasa, quick turnaround versus Rebellis de Spain. How about that? I like that one. Or if it's not Rebellis de Spain, let's do Tai Tuivasa versus Muhammad Usman. Okay, let's do Tai Tuivasa versus one of the Tafa brothers. They're always ready to go. That'd be a banger fight. Let's make it happen. I don't think UFC 301 is down the drain. I just think the flyweight division at this point is laughable. We have to be honest about it. It is objectively the worst division out of any of the men's divisions. If I could get rid of anyone, which I don't want to. I don't want to get rid of the flyweight division. But, for example, when someone asks me, Lucas, what's your favorite divisions and rank them all, I usually put flyweight last. And people say, casual, what, flyweight's last, man? Come on, man. You're sleeping on those flyweights, dude. It's like the same reason people used to say you're sleeping on Mighty Mouse. Yeah, for a good reason, because he was fighting a bunch of nobody bums. That's why. The flyweight division is always just the same two guys fighting over and over and over again. Or even worse, it's a dominant champion fighting a bunch of bum-ba-dum-bum-bums. And that's what it is right now. So yes, I think the heavyweight division shits on this division, okay? Sergey Pavlovich and Cyril Gane, those two fighters are more entertaining to watch in the cage than any flyweight fight you could make right now. Okay? Cyril Gane's more relevant than any flyweight right now. Same thing with Pavlovich. Robelis de Spain is more exciting than any flyweight on the roster. And I'm not saying flyweights aren't exciting. I'm not saying that. They can put on great fights. But as far as name value, hype, no one's pacing back and forth thinking about flyweight fights. Come on, man. There's no beef. There's no beef yet. Unless we had Kai Kara-France versus Manel Kape. That seems to be the Habib and Conor of the flyweight division. But they're never going to make it because the UFC, I guess they tried to make it and freaking Kai Kara-France pulled out. The elf that he is. But freaking Pipsqueak Kara-France, man. Freaking S-tier Pipsqueak. Anyway. Yeah, let's go. 301's going to be sick. Can't wait for Anthony Smith to get smoked by Vitor Petrino. Can't wait for Tai Tuivasa to get one-shotted by Robelis de Spain. Honestly, the UFC just make a bunch of heavyweight matchups where those guys don't have to cut weight. That is the solution. That's the solution. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next